Imagine peering into the future, guided by the enigmatic verses of a man from the 16th century whose insights have captivated the world for centuries. Nostradamus, born Michel de Nostradamus in 1503 in the sun-soaked region of southern France, was far more than an astrologer and physician. He was a visionary whose works continue to spark debates and intrigue. Despite his reputation as a seer, Nostradamus himself would have likely identified as a scientist, dismissing the notion of prophecy. His seminal work, Les Prophéties, published in 1555, is a masterful collection of 942 quatrains that weave together Greek, Italian, Latin, and Provençal to mask their true meanings. These cryptic verses, filled with predictions of natural calamities and human misdeeds, have been interpreted as foreseeing countless global events. Join us as we delve into the mysterious life and enduring legacy of Nostradamus, a man whose predictions still resonate and provoke curiosity today. He died in 1566 at the age of 62, a completely respectable lifespan for a man in the 16th century. He was known to suffer from gout for many years, and it's entirely possible that this condition worsened to the point that it caused renal failure. Or he could have succumbed to any number of other conditions likely to have afflicted the elderly and infirm of the era. No matter the cause, Nostradamus did seem to perceive that his end was near. One of his more celebrated predictions was of his own death, which he referred to in the text of his last almanac, at least a year before he actually expired. Although he passed away centuries ago, his prophecies have continued to captivate future generations over the years. Nostradamus's most recent prophecy seems to have come true on the very first day of 2024. So surprised, right? The event that I talked about is Japan earthquake. Also known as the Prophet of Doom, the 16th century French philosopher is best known for his foreboding forecasts, which he chronicled in his 1555 Les Prophéties. This time, the Frenchman was credited with forecasting the powerful earthquake that rocked Japan on New Year's Day. Outlining his predictions for 2024, the oracle wrote, "The dry earth will become more parched, and there will be great floods." The psychic's followers reckoned that he could have been referring to the 7.5 magnitude tremor that struck Japan's western coast, toppling buildings and sparking 1 meter-high tsunamis. According to reports, residents in coastal communities fled to higher ground as the waves battered the coast, sweeping houses and cars. Nostradamus's prediction was apparently not the only harbinger of a seismic calamity. Over the summer, divers in Taiwan encountered an injured giant oarfish, the doomsday fish, which is said to be a sign of impending earthquakes. This seismic superstition is based on Japanese mythology, which states that plankton eater, which lives between 200 meters and 1 kilometer below the ocean's surface, will intentionally rise to the surface ahead of an incoming tremor. The legend is that if you see an oarfish, doomsday fish, it is a warning sign from higher powers that disasters such as earthquakes are soon to occur, wrote one. They referenced the 2011 Fukushima earthquake and tsunami, which saw dozens of these alleged seagoing seismometers wash ashore in the 2 years preceding the catastrophe. Psychic adherents also say that Nostradamus's dry earth prediction could be referring to the ongoing climate crisis, which has spawned an uptick in droughts and fires worldwide. Last year was officially the hottest year on record, while experts predict 2024 could be another scorcher. Nostradamus also predicted that the Earth's distress signals would be more urgent than ever in 2024. Threats come from nature. Another augury of Nostradamus points to an advance in climate change in 2024, something that would mean more weather disruptions with strong storms or increased temperatures. Accordingly, the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recently said, "There is a 1/3 chance that 2024 will be even hotter than 2023, and a 99% chance that 2024 will be among the 5 hottest years," has been recorded. This is based on the fact that the world is being affected by climate change due to human burning of fossil fuels, along with the El Niño climate pattern emerging in the second half of 2023. That, combined with many natural factors, has caused a series of extreme phenomena such as snowstorms in North America, volcanic eruptions in Iceland, dense fog, and cold waves causing temperatures to plummet. In India, these cases show some of the harshness that the world is going through. The dry earth will grow more parched, and there will be great floods when it is seen, wrote Nostradamus. He also predicted extreme weather events and world hunger, very great famine through pestiferous wave to be precise. The prophet also predicts a cruel tsunami and great floods that will ravage parts of the world, followed by a devastating great famine. Nostradamus warned that the earth will become a reader and there will be great floods. The implication is that the tsunami may impact farmland, contributing to a severe famine. Finally, the Frenchman considered that next year there will be a strong and dangerous earthquake in the world that will mean the loss of thousands of lives. Although the place is not specified, it is reminiscent of what happened recently in Morocco, where thousands of people have lost their lives due to a great earthquake in Marrakesh and surroundings, or the natural disasters that Iceland is suffering at the moment, which could prove Nostradamus right again. Having said that, I will also mention what the Bible says about the end time, and you should try to reflect on the reality with the prophecy from Nostradamus. In Matthew 24:5-8, Jesus gives us some important clues for discerning the approach of the end times. Many will come in my name, claiming, "I am the Christ," and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. An increase in false messiahs, an increase in warfare, an increase in famines, plagues, and natural disasters. These are signs of the end times. One of Nostradamus' most frightening and surprising prophecies was his prediction of the assassination of President John Kennedy, which shocked the United States, the Kennedy assassination. You know, the assassination of President John Kennedy is one of the most infamous moments in American history. On November 22, 1963, the U.S. President and his wife rode together in the back seat of open-top limousine through the streets of Dallas, Texas. As their car crossed Dealey Plaza, however, a shot rang out, and the president slumped over in the back seat. It was Lee Harvey Oswald who would ultimately go down in the history books as John Kennedy's assassin. But the incident also sparked countless conspiracy theories suggesting that Oswald did not act alone, or that the U.S. government had conspired to the president. Some of these theories also make reference to one of Nostradamus' predictions. The ancient task will be completed. From on high, evil will fall, anti-great man. A dead innocent will be accused of the deed. The guilty will remain in the mist. Citing Nostradamus' prophecy, some have said that the dead innocent may refer to Oswald, who was murdered by a Dallas nightclub owner before his trial, and that the real guilty one got away with it. In fact, before he died, Oswald himself claimed to be a patsy. But because Lee Harvey Oswald never went to trial, it is near impossible to say if he truly was John Kennedy's assassin, or if he acted alone. There is still much controversy surrounding John Kennedy's assassination, and many questions left unanswered 60 years later. Perhaps Nostradamus really did predict the event and the mystery that would surround it. Nostradamus continues to shock the world in this 2024 with the prophecy about the leader of the church he talked about, the next pope. According to Nostradamus, we could be facing a year that could mean the farewell to Pope Francis, who at 87 years of age in 2024 has already gone through several health problems. The Pope had to skip the UN climate conference because of lung inflammation and breathing problems. Through the death of a very old pontiff, a Roman of good age will be elected. Of him, it will be said that he weakens his see. But long will he sit and in biting activity, Nostradamus wrote. While the arrival of a younger, vigorous pope sounds like a good thing, Nostradamus immediately goes on to say that the new leader will weaken his see and that he will be pope for a long time. The exact meaning of weaken is, of course, open to debate. Does he mean the influence of the church will somehow lessen, or is some greater scandal on the way? Well, only time will tell. However, it's essential to note that his writings, particularly in Lay's prophecy, are written in a cryptic and metaphorical style that is open to various interpretations. Many of his quatrains are vague and can be applied to different events. Also in 2024, Nostradamus' next prediction also let us be shocked when he mentioned the royal family. Related to the royal family, the French astronomer is said to have predicted the death of Queen Elizabeth and predicted change for the royal family this year. Writing in 1555, he said, "The King of the Isles, who has been involved in an infamous divorce, will be driven out by force. He will then be replaced by one who will have no mark of a king. Many have taken that to be a sign that Charles will abdicate the crown and be replaced by Harry, not William." It came to prominence again when the king confirmed he was undergoing treatment for cancer. Royal watchers speculated that he would stand down, or be forced to stand down, to concentrate on his health. Quite how Harry ends up taking the throne, given his dislike of all things royal, has never been explained, but some fans reckon the apparent mystery of Kate's whereabouts is somehow linked. Not long ago, Kate spoke up to share that she is facing cancer, and she is trying to face it positively. This makes the people who follow the royal family become even more worried, confused, and scared. King Charles and Princess Kate are both facing cancer at the same time. Is the royal family in a period of chaos? And will the person who will replace King Charles' throne be his son? It's difficult to give an answer at this time. We need time to verify Nostradamus' prophecy. Of all historical figures, there are perhaps none more infamous than Adolf Hitler, leader of the Nazi Party. Hitler's rise to power and domination of the countries of Western Europe have been well chronicled, but could they have been foretold years before Hitler was even born? You know what? Nostradamus may have predicted the rise of Adolf Hitler, and now we come to the next prediction of this man about the rise of Hitler. There are, in fact, two Nostradamus predictions that have been linked to Hitler's rise. Here is the first. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who by his tongue will seduce a great troop. His fame will increase towards the realm of the east. And the second, beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Heister. Into a cage of iron will the great one be drawn when the child of Germany observes nothing. Hitler was indeed born to poor parents in 1889 in Western Europe. He was also known for his ability to sway people with words, which allowed him to gain immeasurable power and establish the Third Reich. Furthermore, as a part of the Axis powers, Hitler's Germany formed an alliance with Japan, a realm of the East. Some have claimed the word Heister here refers to Hitler, albeit misspelled. As it turns out, however, Heister is actually the Latin name for the Danube River, the second longest river in Europe, which flows through much of Central and Southeastern Europe, from the Black Forest in Germany to the Black Sea. The Danube flows through or borders parts of Germany, Austria, Slovakia, Hungary, Croatia, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova, and Ukraine, many of which were occupied by Germany during World War II. Supposing Heister refers to the Danube, many have seen Nostradamus' quatrain as a prediction of the large-scale conflict that would affect the region. And it wasn't his only purported prediction about the Second World War. That's why we come to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In August 1945, the United States of America dropped 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, leading to unprecedented devastation. Hiroshima had been an important military base for Japan, a communication hub fortified by anti-aircraft guns. At the time, roughly 40,000 Japanese soldiers were stationed there. By some estimates, the bomb killed as many as 140,000 people, according to the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. Nagasaki faced its own atomic bomb just 3 days after the first bomb hit Hiroshima. The second bomb killed as many as 70,000 people. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki marked a significant turning point in World War II and ushered in a new era of conflict. They showcased the power of the United States military at the time and sent waves of fear across the world. And once again, Nostradamus may have seen it coming. The heavenly dart would stretch its course. Death in the speaking, a great achievement. The proud nation brought low by the stone in the tree. Rumors of a monstrous human bring purge, then expiation. There are several key parts of this prediction that can be related to the atomic bombs. Given that the bombs fell from the sky and were somewhat dart-shaped, they could be referred to as heavenly darts. And while they were indeed devastating, the bombs themselves were hailed by many in the scientific community as great achievements. However, skeptics will naturally argue that any of Nostradamus's predictions should be taken with a grain of salt, or that the words themselves are often too vague to be connected to any one event. Also, Nostradamus mentioned the nightmare of America through "The sky will burn at 45 degrees. Fire approaches the great new city. By fire he will destroy their city. A cold and cruel heart. Blood will pour. Mercy to none." Once again, it may seem like a stretch to suggest that Nostradamus actually predicted the disaster, but one key detail from the prediction has some believers convinced. Specifically, the first line could refer to New York City's proximity to the 45th latitude, rather than the angle of the buildings or the smoke. As for the rest, well, it's not hard to see why it has some people convinced. If any city were to be hailed as the Great New City, New York City certainly fits the bill, and it would be fair to say that anyone who orchestrates a deadly attack has a cold and cruel heart. Mentioning fight, Nostradamus also warns us. World War III. On the other hand, the Frenchman predicted the beginning of a new world war, 79 years after the end of the second one. Nostradamus also predicted something similar to this centuries ago. In one of his quatrains, he wrote about combat and naval battle. He said that the red adversary will become pale with fear, putting the great ocean in dread. Some think that the red adversary could be referring to China. He could well be referring to what happened in Ukraine, the China-Taiwan conflict, or Palestine. Some interpreters point to every earthquake, every political upheaval, and every attack on Israel as a sure sign that the end times are rapidly approaching. While the events may signal the approach of the last days, they are not necessarily indicators that the end times have arrived. The Apostle Paul warned that the last days would bring a marked increase in false teaching. The Spirit clearly says that in later times, some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons. The last days are described as perilous times because of the increasingly evil character of man and people who actively oppose the truth. Throughout Christian history, believers have speculated that the prophesied end times were just about to start. Some audacious ones have even set specific dates. People predicting end times dates usually focus on things like wars, increasing wickedness, and natural disasters. They talk about bad things like the increased fierceness of storms, the surge of killer viruses, severe famines and droughts, and escalating tensions between nations. Nostradamus not only predicted the death of Queen Elizabeth and his own death, but he also foretold the death of a French king. The next prophecy I want to share with you is the death of King Henry II. Just 4 years after the publication of La Prophétie in the summer of 1559, King Henry II of France met a gruesome death, in a fashion eerily similar to one of Nostradamus's predictions. A religiously bigoted Roman Catholic, King Henry II was known to cut out the tongues of Protestants and burn heretics alive. But Henry would meet his own equally brutal fate when he challenged Gabriel de Lourges, the Count of Montgomery, to a joust. De Lourges knocked the king down in the first go, but Henry refused to accept defeat. He once again took the reins of his horse and charged for de Lourges' lance out. When de Lourges' lance struck Henry's helmet, however, it splintered into 2 shards, which shot through Henry's eye and into his brain, scattering splinters throughout his head. Henry suffered for 10 agonizing days before eventually dying in bed. What did Nostradamus have to say about the whole affair? The young lion will overcome the older one on the field of combat in a single battle. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1. Then he dies a cruel death. Some skeptics have argued that the field of combat doesn't apply here, as this was meant to be a friendly jousting tournament. Reports also differ as to whether the men's shields were emblazoned with lion emblems. Still, the golden cage could be taken as a reference to the king's helmet. And given that the lance split 2 wounds made 1 isn't far off the mark. Of course, a French prophet could not fail to mention a famous figure from France. That figure is Napoleon. Now we come to the rise and conquest of Napoleon. Napoleon Bonaparte is a man who needs no introduction. One of history's most infamous figures, Napoleon seized power in France not long after the French Revolution and dreamed of building an empire. His forces tore across Europe and brought the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire to its knees. Of course, his story did not end in victory. Napoleon was ultimately exiled twice from his country and died in near isolation. Still, his historic rise to power and conquest over much of the European continent forever changed the course of history. To much of the world, Napoleon's rise came as something of a surprise, but not, it seems, to Nostradamus. Pau, nay, Laurent, more fire than blood. Swimming in praise, the great man hurries to the confluence. He will refuse entry to the magpies, Pampon and Durance will confine them. As with all of Nostradamus's predictions, a bit of interpretation is necessary. It should be noted, though, that Pau, Ney, and Laurent all refer to cities in France, although in the third instance the city is actually named Oloron. However, Nostradamus was also rather fond of anagrams, and when their letters are rearranged, these three cities spell out Roi Napoléon, very similar to the French, Roi Napoléon, or King Napoleon. Many have also interpreted more fire than blood as a reference to Napoleon's ascent to the throne by taking control through force, rather than having any royal blood. France continues to be mentioned in Nostradamus' prophecy as the French Revolution. The French Revolution was a major turning point in the country's history. Increasingly frustrated with France's royalty, the people of France rose up against the monarchy in 1789 and executed their last king, Louis XV, and their last queen, Marie Antoinette. That July, Parisians stormed the Bastille prison, freeing political prisoners from the symbol of Ancien Regime power. Then in October, conjured by the exorbitant price of bread, they marched 12 miles from Paris to Versailles. There they stood outside the royals' home with their guards' heads on pikes, waiting to take the king and queen with them back to Paris. It would be another few years before Louis was sentenced to death for conspiring against the state. About 20,000 people gathered around to watch the executioner remove his head in January 1793. 9 months later, his queen met the same fate. Once the deed was done, her executioner, Charles-Henri Saint-Saëns, held up her head to the crowd, who cheered back, "Vive la République!" But more than 2 centuries before the French Revolution took place, Nostradamus wrote, "Songs, chants, and demands will come from the enslaved, held captive by the nobility in their prisons. At a later date, brainless idiots will take these as divine utterances." There are several interpretations of this quatrain, but it is not difficult to see how it could be linked to the French Revolution. While the people of France were not technically enslaved, there is no doubt that they suffered and blamed the royalty for it. Moreover, some of them were actually held captive by the nobility in their prisons, specifically the Bastille. It also may not be entirely fair to call King Louis XVI or Marie Antoinette brainless idiots, but you could argue that by being beheaded, they were quite literally rendered brainless. The Great Fire of London is the next prediction that came true. On September 2, 1666, a small fire broke out in Thomas Farriner's bakery on Pudding Lane in London. While fires weren't uncommon in those days, none had been quite so devastating as this one. When the Lord Mayor of London, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, was awoken and told of the fire, he replied, "Fish, a woman might piss it out." What Bloodworth and many others ignored was that London had been in the midst of a particularly hot, rainless summer. As a result, the wooden buildings were tinder dry, and the fire spread rapidly. Soon enough, more than 300 houses were ablaze, and the fire showed no signs of stopping. Attempts to put the fire out using water-filled buckets were futile, and panic spread as quickly as the flames. For almost 4 days, the fire raged on, and King Charles II even ordered for the houses in its path to be pulled down to create a fire break. Alas, it could not stop the raging fire. King Charles II himself eventually joined the firefighting brigade, passing along buckets and buckets of water to try and put the flames out, once again, to no avail. By September 4th, half of London was on fire. Then it was suggested that gunpowder be used to blow up houses in the fire's path, creating an even larger firebreak. Unfortunately, the sound of the explosion led rumors to spread of an invading French army, resulting in even more panic. In the end, 4/5 of London turned to ash, including nearly all the civic buildings and 13,000 private residences. The inferno was finally snuffed out on September 6th, but the devastation was tremendous. London had to be almost entirely rebuilt. It was an unpredictable calamity. Or was it? Over 100 years before the Great Fire of London, Nostradamus had possibly foretold the event. The blood of the just will commit a fault at London. Burnt through lightning of 23's the 6th, the ancient lady will fall from her high place. Several of the same sect will be killed. While the total number of human deaths as a result of the Great London Fire is relatively low, many historians estimate the number was just 6. Some have suggested the blood of the just may refer to the millions of flea-carrying rats that had helped spread the Great Plague, also known as the Black Death, just 1 year earlier. The fire may have devastated the city itself, but it also effectively put an end to the plague in London by killing off strains of the disease and the hosts that carried it. Again, this isn't to say that Nostradamus truly could see the future. There is still a fair amount of interpretation that must be applied to his admittedly vague prophecies, and given the total number of predictions he wrote down, it's fair to assume that at least a few could later be applied to any number of situations.